Hello there, welcome to my channel. Recently I've been watching the new Scott Pilgrim show on Netflix and it got me thinking. It got me thinking about the 2010 live-action version of the story Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So I rushed off to see if it was still as good as I remembered. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a live-action fantasy adventure with a bit of romance, a couple of grand musical battles, and a few straight-up brawls. It tells the story of a man called Scott Pilgrim who lives in Toronto, Canada. Scott is suffering after a bad breakup and going through a rebound phase when he meets the girl of his dreams, Ramona Flowers. Ramona isn't ordinary though, she comes with crazy baggage of her own. More specifically, 7 evil exes who intend to fight Scott to the death for Ramona's hand. Can Scott survive his trials and win the girl of his dreams? The film stars Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona Flowers, and Jason Schwartzman as the mysterious head of the League of Evil Exes, Gideon. The film was directed by Edgar Wright, who also wrote the film with Michael Bacall. The screenplay is based on a comic book by Brian Lee O'Malley. The story is a comic book adventure from the perspective of Scott Pilgrim. There are no rules to the world, meaning anything can happen. Scott can punch a guy into coins, his music can create a giant gorilla that fights dragons, and there's a highway running through his head. Nothing makes sense, but the film plays up that nonsensical aspect to create a fantastical tale that's grounded in real emotions. It creates huge, dramatic characters for Scott to face off against and surround himself with, and then lets them take part in creative battles with lots of different styles and larger-than-life settings. They use CGI graphics to insert video game overlays, and video game sound effects and songs to reference and imitate video game experiences. The emotional tale underneath is realistic despite all of the fantasy it's surrounded with. Cast-wise, the film sees a huge list of supporting actors who pop up for short periods like the evil exes or different friends of Scott who only appear in select environments. In the background, there are a ton of extras at the party, at the different venues they play at, and watching the plethora of fights. For main characters, you have Scott, Ramona, Knives, and Gideon. Scott Pilgrim is an awkward guy who plays the bass and likes video games. He's also dumb, but really good at fighting. He's always putting up an act for the people around him and spends most of his time avoiding problems like the plague. Knives Chow is his high school girlfriend who he ends up cheating on. Knives is an innocent and somewhat naive person who follows Scott around and becomes obsessed with him because of the way Scott fails to deal with her. Ramona Flowers is the cool girl who just moved here from America. She's got flashy looking hair and wears unique outfits while putting up an air of not caring. Ramona came to Canada looking for a new start and fights to keep it. Gideon Graves is Ramona's ex-boyfriend who organized the League of Evil Exes. He's a maniacal plotter who isn't above cheating to get what he wants. He's quite literally the personification of a Napoleon complex. Visually, the film follows Scott through his daily life and makes use of CGI overlays and graphics to create a comic book effect. It looks and feels like you're reading a comic book at many points throughout the film. They use this to create flashy battle sequences with anime-style fights and musical numbers that have a visual flair to them. You can see the notes, and the music affects a plethora of aspects of the visual environment. Sound-wise, there are both original songs and background instrumentals. Both are used to set the mood, build the atmosphere, support the story, and punctuate big moments throughout the film. The tracks tend to come in the form of grunge songs with a 90s feel to them, but there is a huge gallery of references to other films, games, and television shows. This film almost feels like a museum to all things geek-related. So how does it do from a technical perspective? The writing does a great job of introducing you to the lore and characters, and they manage to create a flavorful world that perfectly captures the essence of the original comic. You want to root for Scott and Ramona during their adventure, and there are a ton of epic moments both from an emotional perspective and from an action viewpoint. There is also some great music that ties directly into the story and pushes it forward. All that said, they don't explain anything and it skips around a lot. It would be easy to get lost between all of the fancy transitions, fantastical elements, and characters coming and going. The characters other than Scott and Ramona tend to be presented in a one-note fashion as well. They are quite interesting, but if you're not into the drama and spectacle, it might be too over the top. The cast plays their roles in a dramatic fashion, with even the little side characters presenting big personalities that easily fit into a stereotype. There are lots of great moments of a variety of different flavors that come from the supporting cast, and most of them are highly memorable. On top of that, there are a lot of great performances, but I'll mostly talk about Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim and Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona. The two of them make up the emotional core of the film and keep it grounded. Michael Cera is the most awkward person in the world, and his ability to turn any moment into a highly cringe-worthy experience is impeccable. As Scott, he also manages to show just enough small bits of charm to make you understand why people are drawn to him, and his confidence during the fights was off the charts. He had great chemistry with both Wong and Winstead and played off the other characters really well in terms of humor. Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona is the manic pixie dream girl. She's weird and too cool to be a part of anyone's group, but also soft and sweet underneath. She provides a great foil to Scott and Knives and plays the emotions wonderfully. Visually, the film creates a spectacle out of every moment. The journey itself is almost as interesting as the story, with all the little details that they snuck into every scene and all the references littered about the world. The sets, the characters, the action, and the musical numbers all stand out in an endless number of ways. There's so much style to the film that it almost starts to look like an animated adventure at different points. The editing takes the storytelling to the next level as well. The transitions and the ability to manipulate sound and graphics all come together to create an incredibly directed experience. You constantly feel like your attention is being pulled around. Sound-wise, the film makes excellent use of its soundtrack. It does everything well, and half of the songs in the film will be stuck in your head for years to come. They play a pivotal role in the story, set the mood and atmosphere in ways that are highly dramatic, and manage to pull all kinds of emotion out that you didn't even realize was there. The music makes jokes, punctuates jokes, and turns the intensity of every scene up to 11. It's an incredibly moving use of music. Overall, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a wonderful film that I would recommend to just about anyone. It's got wonderful writing that's moving and exciting. It creates characters you want to root for and takes them on a journey you wish you could be on. And the experience is fantastic the whole time. The visuals and soundtrack are both incredibly well done and effective at telling the story. If you can get past the fantastical nature of the film, I highly recommend you give it a try. As for a rating, I'd give the film a 9 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Bye-bye.